Hello, hello. Welcome to Brian Breaks Character. This is not Brian. This is Shawn K. Jain. I'm here as a guest host, here to grill Brian on some tough questions. We're gonna get very personal. No, we're not gonna get very personal, but we're gonna get very professional. And I have worked with Brian for 2 years. I've taken several courses with him, including Become Offer Only, which is what we're going to be kind of focusing on today. But Actor Operating System, I'm very involved with as well, and I love working with Brian, and we're very happy to have him as the guest in the guest chair.
I appreciate it. And y'all, part of the reason why I invited Sean on here is because I knew he would do this to me, is that he would put me in the hot seat. And
That's right.
because I have, and Sean himself, if you can just give everyone a little bit of background on yourself as an actor, because you have a really, I think, really wonderful and awesome, incredible resume. Just give them a little sense of what you're up to and what you're
Yeah.
about.
Honestly, when I was like in my 20s, I thought I would never act again. I acted in growing up as a child, not professionally. I was not a child actor professionally. I'm not that messed up, but I acted in high school and in college, and then I stopped and I moved on to other things. I got interested in politics, in communications work, marketing, and I did that for 7 years. And then I realized I really missed acting, and I was living in Washington D.C. and I started taking classes and started acting professionally, and then went to grad school for acting, and then came back to New York, and I've been here for over 4 years now, pursuing acting, and it's been a really great year. I did not think this would be possible, perhaps ever, but to make my living from acting, from
Yes.
yes, I know, TV
Yeah.
work, commercial work, voiceover, audiobooks, all of that. So it's been a really ever since I started working with Brian, it's been really great, and yeah. So
Right.
I'm yeah,
Right.
that's
I'm so
me.
glad you're here. And part of the reason, again, that I want to have you here is because I want to talk about something I think a lot of actors really feel like is distant from them. And I promise you, I'll hand back the mic host and like the mic, the hosting
Hmm.
microphone in 2 seconds, Sean,
Yeah, I
is
didn't ask a
that,
question. You're just
yeah,
talking.
I want to just start us off so we guess this container is, I think I want to talk about offer only. And the reason why
Yeah.
this is so important to me, because I think I'll just share with everyone before we get started is one of the only things. So I, quit being an actor when I realized that coaching people was what I really loved doing. But I will say that the one thing I miss about acting is the perverse thing that's not good to miss about acting, which is the little piece of competition or idea that you're getting ahead because someone else is behind, or that little that can show up from time to time when you're like, oh, I got it. And there's a sense of like, I beat out other people. And that can happen from time to time when you're acting. And there's a little bit of pride that can come from that, which I totally get. But at the heart of it, the jobs that I loved getting the most were ones where someone just called me up and said, Brian, will you come do this job?
Hmm.
And I think that we believe that offer only or be getting an offer is something that happens when you're Nicole Kidman, and it's not something that you can achieve until you're at that level. And that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation. Of course, there's this class coming up in next week to help people achieve that. But I wanted to talk about the concept of offer only because it means you have to let go of the idea of competing at an audition, and I think that that's also like a weird thing. But I'll pass the mic back to you so you can put me through the ringer here, Sean, but I wanted to just kind
Yeah.
of set the stage.
Yeah. So I mean, offer only. Do you recommend that I go to my agent or manager and say, I'm only offer only now, and that's just send them my headshot and my reel, and I'm gonna go on vacation, and I'm never gonna audition again. I mean, how does that work functionally?
Yeah. So hell
Unless
no.
you're Nicole Kidman, because I do
Yes.
think that's probably what Nicole Kidman
Yes, it is.
does.
So heck no, do not do that. Offer only may be a little bit of a misnomer in that way. So what I mean
Yeah.
by offer only is if we can think of ourselves as living as being in a space in our career where we've established enough of a track record or reputation that we can get jobs without having to audition. And before anybody hears that and thinks like, well, I don't have enough credits or da, 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 that is not actually true. If you have any professional credits, this is a space you can already occupy. So I really want to make sure that we know that the actors that we're talking to here are not actors who have only achieved a lot at this point. I really want to make sure that that's clear, because my suspicion is you've probably worked at a theater or you've done a commercial or you've been on TV. You've had some kind of work where a paycheck was attached to it, or maybe there wasn't even a big paycheck, but you'd like to work there again. And remember, everyone who is next to you in this business is hustling at the same time. One of the ways I like to say this is if someone has a website, they are hustling. If there's a
Mm.
director who has a website, if there's a cast director who has a website, you don't need a website when you're no longer hustling. So it's a good way to kind of to like understand who is in the land of working to get jobs, working to get work, right? And so when I think about offer only, it really is someone who says it's believing and building on the relationships you've built. So a lot of times I think you'll book a job and you'll do a great job on set, and wow, that was awesome, I got my paycheck, and look at the commercial, or look at me on that co-star or that guest star, and there it is, and ta-da, end of story, and I'm on to the next. And I think where most performers fall short is building on those relationships. And I say that really lightly because there has not been a lot of training around how do you maintain a relationship when you're not standing in front of someone shaking hands with them. Like, what do you even mean? And I would say most people, like, long distance relationships are hard. Like, there's a lot of reasons to back up the idea that when you're not with someone, does the relationship actually exist? I bet a lot of us are good at this with our parents, for example, but I bet you
Hmm.
there's some cousins and aunts who don't hear from you that often. I'm just going to say. So when I think about offer only, to me, it is correspondence with people you've connected with in the past. And I think the first thing actors often will believe about themselves, and this is for any creative really, is, oh yeah, but it was too long ago. Or
Right.
is it too late to reach out? Or are they even going to remember me? And those are just questions to keep you from stepping into this new way of being. So I don't know if I answered your question clearly enough, but no, don't go run to your agents and say, I'm now offer only. Because I often think what happens is you usually will get an offer from someone outside of your representation. And then you have
Sure.
to just loop in your reps and say,
Yep.
hey, can you help me with this contract? I also want to make sure anybody who hears this isn't only for people who have representation. When you're thinking about offer only, I would say for a long time in my career, when I was in New York, and when I was in New York, I was freelancing with 8 agents at one point, which I don't recommend, but I would have 5 auditions in a day. And a lot of times I was getting auditions because I'd stayed in such close contact with those casting directors
Mm.
in by reaching out to them and thanking them for my callbacks and thanking them for my bookings and thanking them for the auditions. So that the reason why I was so popular amongst those agents I was freelancing with was, oh, Brian's getting into these offices all the time. And it wasn't just because, oh, he's got a great headshot. That's not why. It's because those offices knew who I was.
Yeah.
And that is what comes from offer only. So I want to make sure that we're saying, like, offer only helps at 2 levels. One is getting the offer, and 2, getting more auditions when it's the straight route to an audition.
Great. And so it sounds like the course, it's really about kind of maintaining relationships, how to build and maintain and grow relationships in the industry. Would you say that that's accurate? And kind of, without us doing the course right
Yes,
now, I mean, what are kind of some of the top line
sure.
tools and tips that you have for folks maybe who are just listening or watching?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest takeaways to hear is this is an intensive. So what that means is this is different than other things I've taught before. So those of you who listen, who've taken classes with me or whatever, this is an intensive. We're going to do the work together. This is a 3-hour class. You're not going to be sitting there just writing it like you're at a SAT or something. But it's a 3-hour class. I'm going to put you into breakout groups with very clear directions so that by the end of this class, you'll have the starter email that you can use to send to anyone in your network. Like, it's a paint by
Mm.
number system, so that once you've got this email drafted, you're going to be able to use it in many, with any connection you have in the past. And the part that I think you need to just like believe into now is, no, it is not too long ago, and it is
Yeah.
never too late to say thank you. So those are the 2 tracks we're going to run on, is connection and thank you. And those are the 2 tracks that I think build relationships. So in this class, like, I'm going to give you the mindset around it, and then I'm going to give you the system to keep in track with it. But I want to also, just before we just get there, is the belief in whatever you did in your past builds a reputation
Mm.
needs to be foundational to this. Because I was talking to an actress today, and she was saying, like, I kind of botched it on set last week. Like, they threw all this stuff at me all of a sudden, and I felt
Mm.
like I didn't do a great. And so I feel weird about saying thank you. And I was like, can you walk me through what actually happened on set? She's like, well, all of a sudden my take was first and it wasn't supposed to be. And then they decided they were going to have me improv and da 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 da. And I said, okay, I totally get where you're coming from, of why internally I know that the actor on set is going, I'm
Right.
trying to get this right. I'm trying to get this right. Da, da, da. Especially when it's that kind of a set where, like, suddenly you're improving and, like, right, and all that's going on. You're like at the racetrack while the director's like, do this, and yelling behind the camera. And maybe you can hear them, maybe you can't. But at the end of the day, they got their take. And so I said, for that kind of a conversation, there's no apology. What
Yeah.
there is incredible pride. And so I said, you can tilt your hat that the beginning of the day was a little weird, but you say that by saying, wow, thanks so much for the opportunity to throw me right into the lion's den the first thing in the day. I loved improvising up there, and glad we got there. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is a very small business. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. So that you're really not apologizing, but you're saying yes to the challenge that was there. And this isn't to paint a rosy picture on something that was actually hard for you,
Of
but we're
course.
trying to build a relationship. We are not trying to apologize for who we are. And I don't
Mm.
think, unless you like shit the bed on set, I don't think you need to send that kind of a email, right? Unless you really like
You
bitch
were
about something.
fired.
Yeah, you did a
Yeah, yeah.
hundred takes and you couldn't say the line once, right?
Right,
Like
right, right.
then we have problems. Yeah,
And so it sounds like, I mean, I think those of us who are actors, I mean, we're used to risk taking. We've all taken risks just doing this as a career. Going on stage. I mean, people who are not actors, generally are not comfortable going on stage. So talk a little bit about how auditions are kind of the safe way to go about pursuing an acting career
yeah,
versus, some of the things they're going to talk about and become offer only are maybe a little bit more, feel at least more vulnerable or
yeah.
risky.
That's such a good point, because as an actor, you knew from the day you kind of got the message, be an actor, auditions are going to be part of my life. So whether or
Right.
not you love auditions right now, you've at least had a chance to acclimate to the temperature of the water you're in, right? You know the temperature of the pool of auditions, and you've done enough. You're going to audition way more than you're going to book. We all know that. So at least you get the repetition of the kinesthetic experience of that over and over again, whether that's a self-tape or you're putting it on tape in the room. So the idea of building a relationship outside of an audition or outside of being on set can feel super foreign or like a new frontier and very vulnerable, because you're going to want to put something into the mail or put something over email that is saying, I believe in this relationship that we've started, and I believe in the work that I've delivered to you so far. And that is vulnerable, both because it feels like, oh no, do I need to ask for something? And I'll just give
Mm,
this point to everybody right now. When you are being thankful for something, you are never asking for something in the same
yeah.
email. Gratitude lives on its own. So that's one point, is take that away from today. But the reason why I think that auditions are the safe way is auditions are going to be the thing that do happen. Yes, I know everyone wants more all the time, so I don't want to acknowledge, I'm not going to deny that. But the thing that most actors can be challenged by, or will drag their feet on, or will never do, is to transact in the currency of connection, which is,
Mm-hmm.
I know you, we work together. That's awesome. I can't wait till the day it happens again. And the languaging around that, that's a lot of what will happen in this workshop, I think, because when sometimes you crack open the language for this, you suddenly feel more authentically yourself. And too often, I think where we have a difficulty with this is, I feel like I'm asking for something, or is it okay to email them? And there's a lot of like permission asking here. And if you take off the actor hat for a second and be like, if I was a realtor or I worked at a bank, none of these thought, like, we have to email each other to get business done. It's what we do. We email each other. And realtors are sending you stuff in the mail all the time. Anybody who lives anywhere, you're probably getting like a magnet or whatever. You see a bus side or whatever, right? So like, we have to have our version of it, and our version of it. I mean, I think the gift of it is, I mean, this is really tricky for Brian Break's character listeners. There's a lot of actors who aren't doing this. So the actors that do move themselves ahead very quickly. So you can see the return on putting in this kind of investment in the relationship outside of just the audition really quickly, because so few actors are taking this action, which isn't me wishing that, other actors don't take this action. This is me just like acknowledging that this is really big currency that you can transact in, I think. And I'm using the word transacting here not to mean money. I want to make sure everyone clear. This is just like how we connect. You're building a context for a relationship. Um, and I'm certain that anyone listening right now is already thinking like, oh yeah, there's that one director or that one producer or that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you sat down for an hour and you said, let me make a list, or if you sat down with your resume, you're like, who's the writer, director, producer on each one of these projects that I worked with? And oh my gosh, do I have the call sheet from this project? And then you're getting all these names. And a lot of times I think, going on a little bit here, because I think a lot of times an actor will write off like student films that they've done. Like, I will
Right.
just share one of the student films that I did at NYU. The DP for that film was one of there was a real casting director attached to this film. I remember, because it was an MFA, and that was one of the reasons that I auditioned for it. The DP on that film just shot the Mark Ruffalo series on HBO. I know this much is true, right? And then there was another Nicole Kidman film he did. So we have to remember that everybody's moving up. Those are the people
Exactly.
around you. Those are the ones you've been waiting for to steal from. I think that's an indigenous a prayer or chant that I read once. We are the ones you've been waiting for. I think that's an interesting thing to think about.
And how do you advise actors to approach it? If they feel like They don't have a booking lately. So if you don't, what are you sharing with your network if you don't have something you can brag about, or I was just on this show, or I was just doing this. What sorts of things do you recommend actors talk about in those
Sure.
situations?
There's two things I want to say. One is the river that your entire career needs to run on is your actual work. So to
Hmm.
me, what that means is, where can I see your work? Is there a reel? Is there a self-tape? Is there something I can watch? Because the truth of it needing to be recent is not as important as me
Right.
getting an email from you and I can go look at a little bit more. I can see a little bit more of you. I can remember why we worked together. I can remember the spot we did together. I can remember you as that guest star, because the work you do is what needs to stick. That's the sticky stuff we need. So I can call you in to do something else or offer you something else. That's the stickiness, the acting. So that's one river, is that piece. And then the other is, I think the need for something to be recent. Whew, if we can retire this limiting belief, it will be so helpful to you. As a performer, I think you want there to be something recent to talk about because it makes you feel engaged in your
That's
career.
right.
Awesome. And I want that for you. The job of reaching out to other people isn't showing that you're working every 2 seconds. The job of reaching out to other people is showing that you're a reliable talent. So that does
Yeah.
not mean it has to be recent. So one of the things that I think almost always helps actors is, oh, there's no way that everyone you've ever worked with has your resume memorized. Okay.
Of course.
So I love it when an actor goes, I wanted to share this co-star spot I did 4 years ago because I was thinking about it the other day and I love da 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 da. Since then, like you're literally just giving us more context to understand something about you as an actor. Or I want to share one of my favorite theatrical experiences. Here's a picture from it because clearly you're probably not going to film from a TV show or a play that you did. But when you're talking about, this is the key here. When you're talking about the character you played in that piece, in that play, let's say, I am clocking something about your castability, something about your branding. I'm certainly clocking your passion for the for being an actor. Just remember, your passion for being an actor isn't what I transact in. I'm a casting
Hmm.
director, I'm
Hmm.
a producer, I'm a writer. I'm a director, right? I transact in your castability in what you play, in your talent. So be mindful. We can also be like, I'm so excited. And the passion piece is a little like, meh, we're good on that. We get that you're passionate or you wouldn't be reaching out at all. It's more important that we brand ourselves, and branding yourself doesn't mean it has to be recent. So that's where I think that we
Mm.
can really let go of this idea. Sometimes even I think that an actor will sacrifice, I recently booked XYZ, which doesn't fit with their normal castability at all. It's not what they would normally do. And they'll put that in their newsletter to the confusion of the people who might receive it, or to the confusion of, I'm not talking about newsletters and become offer only. I'm really talking about building relationships continuously. So I want to, or building a relationship that you've let kind of grow stale in a way. But I want to just add into this the idea that the having being memorable is more important than you being recently working.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I think, basically what you're talking about is like recency bias,
Yes.
and I think we all
Nice
have that.
word. Yes. See, I knew you
Oh,
went
I
to
know.
Harvard. There we
Thank you.
go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. No, but we all do that. I mean, we think about who we've worked with, or we think about who we're connected with. We just scroll through kind of who we texted recently or whatever. And for me, like the biggest acting job I booked in my career was someone I reconnected with from college who I hadn't been in touch with for maybe 8, 10 years. And I got back in touch with them, not because I was like, can I get a job? But
Yes.
like I just went to coffee with them and was a human being, and was like, and kind of rekindled a friendship, and then they referred me to something without me even knowing.
Yeah.
um and that's just, I think, once you kind of start this practice, it becomes sort of habitual, and I think that without you, it becomes, you have to build the habit. But I
Yes.
think that's such a great way
What
of
you say,
thinking
yeah.
about it, that you are more, and know more people than just the people you've interacted with in the past 6 months or 3 months or whatever.
Yeah, and what you're saying about the habit, I think, is so important because it does need to be a habit. It can't be like I did this
Yes.
once. It's a relationship. But then the
Yes.
other thing is, and this is the part that I think that when you do this, you like the person who you are in your business, and you like yourself better. There's a part where I think a
Yes.
lot of actors want to be the actor who is engaged with the relationships they've made in the past, and they've just never been given a system to do that so that they can feel like this is actually moving the needle in my career and it's worth investing some time. And that's what I give you inside of Become Offer Owner, is creating a system, the foundation for a system where you are being who you want to be in your career because you believe into the idea that relationships will actually make things happen. I think we have a lot of people who are saying like, it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. But then it's like, cool. And then what do you do to maintain the relationship in a way that feels not slimy or gross or like networking? Because we can toss that word around right now, but what we're actually talking about is like being a person with another person and saying, we're in the, like everyone who works in this business is challenged by the hustle. Let's not, unless you know their name right now and they're that famous, the lighting designer, the costume designer, the makeup, every single person is hustling, right? And so that is a beautiful truth that we can all rely on, that says, hey, I know I'll see you out there again. The business is busy and it's also a small world. I'm looking forward to the day we're on set together. Like that's something anyone can say with certainty. And so I believe that when you start this habit, it becomes like wonderfully addictive because you really like who you are and how you're showing up. And then what I see is actors who are saying things like, I didn't have to audition. And like, there's a little bit of like, I always hate it when an actor goes, yeah, I got this part, but I didn't have to audition. Like they kind of shit on it because they didn't have to audition. I'm like, no, that is what we want.
Right.
That is what we want. We want someone to call you and say, do you want to do this job? I remember I had this audition for this commercial was when I was doing commercials, and I had this audition and didn't book it. And then I got to set like, I don't know, 3 years later on a different set. And the director said to me, I don't know how I stayed in touch with the director. They must have given us the information at the callback, because the director said to me on the set 3 years later, yeah, Brian, I really remembered you from audition. And I was literally in my mind like, I do not know memory why you know me, but I must be doing a good job. Part of what we talk about in Become Offer Only is the first. So that was obviously late me connecting with them, because I would have remembered if I did. But there's like how do you deal with the later people? How do you deal with people who you've just auditioned for, had a connection with? How do you deal with someone who've only met over a self-tape, which I think is so tricky to kind of, how do you manage that communication? And then how do you stay in touch consistently after that, so that it's not cloying, it's not annoying, and it does build the connection without, because, we all have been thrown on people's newsletters and been annoyed. Like, why am I getting your newsletter all of a sudden? You can't, that's not going to build the vibe of a great relationship if you're just throwing people on your newsletter without any thought, perspicacity around the relationship before that.
Yeah, and what do you say about actors or people who might be feeling kind of overwhelmed, or who think about, I used to work in marketing, so some of this stuff comes a little naturally to me and other people. But for actors who are, very focused on the craft, very focused on the craft, just want to be in the rehearsal studio all day, and
we use that. You're doing the voice for acting.
I'm doing yes, I'm doing the voice that they use. Yes, I'm. No, but yeah, what do you do? Because in fairness, none of us become actors because we want to be, marketing. People may become realtors because they want their face on signs. I don't know if that's true. I'm sorry to the realtors out there, but I guess my point is, how do you help actors kind of get out of that mindset that, I don't want to think about the marketing part. I just want to do the auditions, just do the auditions, and I will get noticed when it's my time.
Yeah. So I love my actors who are rolling around in black in rehearsal studios and wearing their masks and doing the voices and being animals. Hello, you're my people. But I will say to you, there's a world that we're in, and you can pretend that you're not here. But the truth is, we need to know that you exist. And I wish that you could be discovered for your talent alone. And the problem is, this is the problem. We hear a lot of stories of people who were. And usually if we drill down, that's not exactly the full story. They've had some training. They went to this manager. There's usually something there. But those being discovered on the street kind of stories, or after this audition, everything happened stories, are much more interesting to tell. So that's what you get to read in Vanity Fair sometimes, right? Also, I don't think that things like TikTok and YouTube help us in this area, because those areas are like, I'm doing something around creating content in a very specific way, and that is
also that's a lot of work.
Yeah. Let's not pretend this is not.
Those people are working
their butts
harder
off
than any of us.
Yes.
Let's be real.
Yeah. Totally. So what I like to say to that person is, there's a responsibility for you to tell big, important stories, and there is a safety in remaining in your craft only. That isn't to say that I wish that everyone could just be discovered for being the painter out in the field all the time. But I also believe that, that where it's painting and acting all the time, right? So like I think about Van Gogh, right? Because I love Van Gogh, and to think about like painting and painting and painting. He wasn't painting because he knew his painting would be hung on a wall in a gallery. He's
That's
painting
right.
because he needed to get it right for himself. That being said, we want to also affect change with our art. If you're acting in a studio all the time, then you're a different kind of artist. You're not an artist who's interested in making people feel something or having an impact in that way. Or maybe you've cut off that space. So I always want to check and say, is there any of this that might be a tiny bit selfish? And I say that with a lot of grace because I know that marketing is not fun. So part of where I want to come from in this mindset around marketing is there's only 3 things you're going to be asking someone to do with any kind of marketing. Notice something, feel something, or do something.
Mm,
Notice something might be like, notice my castability. And
mm,
so while I know that, your castability can feel like circling the airport until you kind of get an answer to what that is, all we're trying to do is give them a taste with one of the emails that you send, keeping in mind that this isn't going to be the only email you ever send or the way you connect with them forever. It's just a little taste of what you offer. Another way is to feel something. So feel something might be, I'm going to share some kind of self-tape or something that I've done in the past or a video where I want them to chuckle or I want them to laugh. I want to tell a funny story. It could also be a funny story from set, right? I want to give them a chuckle. I want to bring some lightness to their day. I don't think we're usually trying to make someone feel pain with our marketing messages. So I'm not trying to go there with this. Okay. And then the last thing is do something, and do something kind of connects to clicking. But it might be like, I
yeah.
have a show coming up and I'd love you to come. Here's how you get complimentary free tickets from me. Or here's where you can click to watch a taste of it or watch the teaser. So that's a little bit connected to noticing something. But I think that doing something, it might be like, I want you to attend or I want you to come. Those are the 3 tracks I like to drive on. And so if
Hmm.
you can take out of, I need to put myself out there. I need to put myself out there, like, which
Yeah.
is
Right.
not a good feeling, but I just want to make someone feel something. I want to ask them to do something. I request them to notice something. And it's a request. I think of it, if you can think of like even putting that word in front of it, it's a request for them to notice something. They don't have to. I'm going to give the dignity of them even being okay to delete this email. And also feel something might be to feel gratitude from me, to not that I'm expressing
Hmm.
gratitude to them, but to feel appreciated. Right. So if we can drive on, hello, everyone listening has probably taken an acting class. If they're an actor here, you've heard an objective before. So your objective is to make them feel something, to do something, or to notice something. So if you want them to feel appreciated, how much easier is it to write that messaging?
Absolutely.
Right. It takes out a lot of the noise. And then the other thing is, and this is a good trick, so write this down, everybody. Don't think about, I'm going to write to everyone I've ever connected with. You got to pick one person. And once you write that one messaging, which is what we do inside of this workshop, it suddenly becomes so much easier to write all the other
Hmm.
ones. Sometimes I feel like we're trying to write to all of America, which if you've ever done a commercial audition, you're like, and I'm now going to say this commercial to all of America. You look bad. It's not, no one talks to all of America unless you're the president, right? So, or unless it's a spokesperson spot, right? You're not
Sure.
being that, you're being super authentic here. So you want to be speaking to a single person, the same way you prepare for a monologue. So some of this is very actory. So sometimes I think that can be the way in for that actor who loves the craft to the detriment of saying yes to the business.
Yeah, and I actually would push back on this. I think that's all great, but I would push back on this idea that marketing isn't fun. I do think that if
Great.
you can, that if, and I'm not saying that just because I've like drank the Kool-Aid of marketing or something. I mean, there's a reason I left that career.
Yes.
It
Yes.
clearly wasn't that fun.
Yes.
But I do think if you can, I mean, it's like anything else in life. I mean, if you can find a way to kind of gamify it or to have, to tap into the same creativity that you tap into as an actor and tap into, and also about from connecting with people that maybe you've lost touch with or finding ways to stay connected, if you can tap into it being about that and not being about this gross word networking,
Yeah.
but really about kind of cultivating or whatever you want to call it. I think that it can be fun. It doesn't have to be drudgery.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't be drudgery
No,
if
it
you're
should.
doing it right.
And I'll just say this. I love that you said this. Marketing can totally be fun. And I think the word marketing might rub some people the wrong way, even the same way that
Yes.
branding or networking or all those things. So really like change the words to like connecting with people or
Yes.
staying in touching base. But one of the things I think is important that you say is the first time you do this, it's probably going to take a little bit of keeping your butt in the seat and writing, because let us not forget, writing is also something. I remember, I don't know which writer said this, but you sit in a chair and you bleed and sweat and then it gets onto the page. It's not going to be that hard, but I just need to be like, writing is an experience of trying to take what's in your brain and put it on paper. So one of the things that I always say, and I will say this in my own, is I record myself talking all the time to say what I'm going to say in an email. or I will record, or I will say it out loud in this room to see what it sounds like. The emails that I think pack the most punch, or the communications that pack the most punch, are when it sounds like the way you really talk. Now, I just want to
Hmm.
just briefly say here, not the way you're kikiing with your friends at a bar. Like, we need to like really like talk to someone the way that we would talk with some clarity, right? But I think that if we talk the way we really talk, and we don't use all of our slang at times, although sometimes slang in your email is great, but we need to, it gives the person who's reading it a real sense that there's a human being on the other end of this. Because remember, email of its own function is already electronic and not human. And our goal here is to create a human connection. So the more it sounds like talking, the more the human connection is taken care of.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And I mean, you are like a very mannerly person. It sounds like you have. I mean, I know from taking your courses, man. I've never written so many fucking thank you notes in my life. Thank you notes, and so why would you say that makes us dangerous?
Yeah. I
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I love saying that manners make us dangerous. So here's what I think. So let's talk about the actor who's listening to this right now and is literally wants to turn it off because they don't want to think about this. So I'm talking to you right now
And yet
who's
they're
feeling,
still
yeah, if
listening.
you're still listening, those of you feeling all the resistance about even saying yes to something like this, to saying yes to connecting with people you've went with in the past. You can, if you take yourself out of the equation, and if you believe in having good manners or etiquette, then I think you can say, oh, it's just manners. I have to say thank you. That's like part of my job because I have good manners. And if you take yourself out of that conversation, I think it can make you beautifully and wonderfully dangerous about being seen. Because I
Mm,
think a lot of it about yourself is like putting yourself out there. It's like, doesn't feel good all the time. But what if instead of putting yourself out there, the thought is, oh, this is just good manners. This is what I do. I get an audition. I send thank yous. I book something on set. I send thank yous to everyone I met on set. I send a thank you to the cashier. This is about you being, I always say, like, Downton Abbey, Victorian manners, like we are having good manners. And then it takes, because you can always lean on manners being the
right.
reason why you sent it, instead of you making up the stories. Well, it looks like I want something from them, or da 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 da, all the reasons why it's a problem, so that you can use. I just think that manners can become the reason why. It's because I have good manners. Period. End of story. No, no more thought beyond that. And so I
Yeah,
like that.
and manners are the baseline, and then so it's like when manners are the baseline, then it also removes any sort of expectation that, oh, I mean, I don't expect a thank you when I say thank you, that I'm gonna get a reply. And so when I
Yes.
do get a reply, and sometimes I've gotten some very thoughtful and lovely replies, then it's like a
Gravy,
cherry on
frosting,
top.
cherry on top. Yeah, totally
Absolutely.
unnecessary. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what I will
Yeah.
say is, and there is a little bit of self work to do around. I'm clicking send without needing a response. And so
Yes.
sometimes I say you might need to like write that email, walk away from it, and don't click send until you
Yes.
know it's okay that you're not going to get a response. Like, if there's no question mark in your email, you don't need a response.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have to remember that that's not what we're asking for here. So
Right.
what I would just make sure is your track record isn't by the number of responses you get. Your track record, like
Absolutely.
you said, you gamify this. You could say, I'm going to make sure that I send 5 thank you emails in this week or in
That's
this
right.
next 2 weeks. Like, that's a great way to think about it.
Now, we'll talk about, we have this upcoming this become offer only intensive.
Sure.
What is it all about? Tell us a little more of the details
Sure,
about
yeah.
it.
Let me give you a little more detail. So it's there's an offer of 3 different days: Monday, November 14th, Tuesday, November 15th, and Wednesday, November 16th. It's 3 hours. Of course, we're going to take breaks in there. And in it, I'm going to walk you through a system to creating a foundation for a system for reaching out to people who you've connected with in the past, whether that's on set, whether that's a self-tape, whether that's an audition, and creating the foundation for both the personal contact you have with them and then a system to stay in touch with them going forward. Because like we said, it's not a one and done, right? And how do you do that thoughtfully with a system that doesn't make them not feel human? And so
Right.
that's what we're going to create within this. And part of what we'll do in this, because it is an intensive, the reason why I made this an intensive, I want to be very clear, isn't because I'm like, let's just be together for 3 hours. It's because I know this is the work that an actor will slink away from, that
Mm,
we'll go to a free class and then pull away from and not take the next step to really execute it. So that's why we're going to be together in 3 hours, and you will leave with, like, I like to think of as a paint by numbers email that you can use again and again to do the first step in this, and then a system, the foundation for a system to stay in touch with people ongoing. So in those 3 hours, you're going to leave with something really juicy that you can send on the same day. And I think that's really exciting. And if you go to becomeofferonly.com, which I'm real glad we got that URL, I was pretty proud of that. You'll find all the
nicely
details
done.
of how to sign up for that and spend this time with me. The last time we did this, people's eyes were, really, really wide. Minds were blown. People were exciting. And I say that because at the end of the day, what I want is what we talked about earlier, which is an actor is really happy with how they're showing up in the business. So if you're an actor who's like walking around like, what should I do to get more auditions? What should I do? What am I going to do with my energy? Right as we're moving into the time for the holidays, when it's a beautiful time to reach out specifically, even, this is a great answer to that question, and an answer to that question that leaves you feeling like, I am existing in my career. I am not playing at it. This is what it looks like. And I believe that this kind of connection system allows you to see dividends in years to come continuously, because you're building relationships where someone's saying, oh, can you come do this reading? Brian, we got a spot in this. It's got a couple lines. Would you come do it on this day? Hey, we have a commercial. Will you do that? Like, this is what happens when you build this kind of, when you build it, they will come, but only if you tell them about it, is what I always say. And I want to just think about this. If everyone who's listening, there are people who remember you that you have no idea that they think of you. They remember you from the shoot. They're looking at the tape that you shot 10 years ago because they're organizing files on their computer today. And there is money in the bank that you're not even taking any dividends on right now. And this is the first step at doing that. It doesn't matter how long you've been in this business, how short you've been in the business. Obviously, you've been in the business for a long time. We got a lot more people to pick from. But honestly, you only need a few people that you stay in touch with for you to keep working. And that's what this is about.
And is it, is it mostly email based, or what kind of other tools? I mean,
yeah, I like the question. So it doesn't have to,
gift giving. Is that, what are some of the things you?
I'm not going to move into gift giving too much in this program, because this needs to be about the de rigueur. Like, this is the schedule of me staying in touch with people kind of system.
Got it.
But I will talk to you that it is mostly email. That being said, we all know that there's some people. I'm going to give you a plan for how to get like a method to get people's email addresses, and then also a mindset for when you can't get it and how to react to that. And then how do we take this and bring it to social media without becoming social media superstars? That is not what this class is about. It's about using social media to communicate. So there is a place where if you can't find someone's email, how do I work the system and not end up in someone's dusty old DMs that no one looks at, so that I can stay in touch with some of these people? Like, because you know how you go into like, you're
is
not
that your drag name? Dusty old DMs?
It's a good one. Dusty old DMs.
Halloween 2023.
Yeah, she's got a show. It's called #. But you know how you end up in that DM box where it's like you're not friends with them yet? Like, how do we kind of solve a little bit of that? But I want to underline this for everyone, is regardless if they see it, by you sending it, something will happen to you. Yes, I'll give you a system to try to get it seen. I want to be clear of that. But something happens to the way you show up. And I just want you to imagine, like, let's pretend there's someone listening who has great reps. They're going out all the time. And a year from now, you're like, I think I want to upgrade my reps. And if you have done this work for a year with this system that I'm going to teach you, and you've got a plan, how much more powerful you'll be going to these new reps and saying, here's why it's time for me to get to reps that are a higher level. Here's what you need to know has happened in the past year, and here's who you need to know communicates with me now. It's a different kind of fuel to drive on than what we're normally talking about. And that excites me, of course. Right. And then again, I want to make sure the biggest excitement is like getting jobs with no audition. Like, that's what Become Offer only means to me. It is like literally, hey, you want to come do this job? Hey, we've got this spot for you in the show. That is the vibe that I want for you, so that yes, you'll have auditions from time to time. And then you're also getting jobs where it's like, hey, come do this. That's how someone becomes in the space where like, oh, I'm making my living from acting because people are hiring me again and again and again. That's what I want.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. 100%.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, is there anything else? I mean, I feel ready to go.
Oh, great.
Is there anything?
No,
anything
I
else
love
you
it.
want people to know? Any other final?
I think just, Shawn,
thoughts?
because you've taken this class before, I would love to, if I can turn the tables on you and just say, are there anything like that you took away from it, or that you have questions about that are lingering from the last time that we did this kind of work together?
My only question that remains is, and maybe the course has changed, or maybe it's maybe there's something that I just forgot or something, is that for me the maintaining is always a challenge. I think it's easy to do an initial reach out to kind of. I think the maintaining. I think it's easy to come up with something to say to someone, and kind of to try that, but. Really kind of doing it as a practice, I think, can sometimes be challenging for me. And sure. I'm curious what you recommend in that regard.
Sure. So a couple of things I heard in there, and I just want to make sure I narrate this for everyone who's listening. So one thing I'm hearing is it's easy for you to do that first one, which is very personal. Right.
Yes.
Right. So great. Good. Great. You got that muscle grown. That's really great. Number two is you're saying it's harder for me to keep the consistent staying in touch because at that point, I'm assuming you're kind of graduating into the level where you might be using something like a newsletter, I put in quotes, but some kind of email that may be going to more than one person at a single time.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and one of the things we want to do is let go of what is that really great word you use? Because I'm going to steal it.
Recency bias.
Recency bias. Yes, we're going to ditch the recency bias, first of all.
Yes.
Right. And so what that means, I remember working on a newsletter with you that had to do about some audiobooks that you worked on.
Yes.
It was really
yes.
meaningful
Yes.
to you. Right.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I take away from that, and I hope that you did, is if it is meaningful to you, it can be something that you share in a newsletter. Because we will be able to
Right.
understand you, the performer, a little bit better and the branding behind you, because that's the essence of what Shawn brings to set. So if we can
Yeah.
ditch the recency bias, the next point I would say is pull out your resume. Which one of these credits do people need to know about? Because they just imagine they were blind to it the first time they looked at your resume.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm sure
right,
there's a
right.
role that comes to mind, like they need to know I did this role. And I can talk
Yes.
about this. And then what I like to believe, and this is where there's like a suspension of disbelief a little bit, is as you write that newsletter, by the time the next one comes along, you're going to have something that has happened. So you're going to kind of bounce back and forth almost from, I'm doing a branding one from my past. I'm doing a recent thing because something has probably happened in the past 2 months. So if you think of yourself alternating, it should give you a little bit more ease instead of feeling like you have to come up with something new every single time.
Yes. Got it. Got it.
Great.
Totally.
And then
totally,
also I'll just share with everyone in Become Offer Only, I'm going to share a bunch of ideas for how to position that. So want to make sure this is not a class about just writing a newsletter. This is a class about connecting with one-on-one. And then we lead you into how do you consistently stay in touch with someone, whether that's a newsletter or not. We can come up with other ways, but I'm going to give you a bunch of ideas to play with in terms of when there's not this recent thing, how can I send something and what can I say? So I'm going to give you a bunch of like a brainstorm list of ideas. So you can use that as like, I call it the ultimate list of ideas for sending an email so that you can do that without the pressure of I have to do something recent. And remember our manners. It's good manners for me to say, hey, here's what's going on with me. I can't wait to hear from you. So we have to lean into that piece as well. Yeah.
Great.
Cool. Thank you so much, Shawn, for coming on being the host today. I'm so grateful to be on your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah. Thanks to everyone. And, I guess you'll be the host again.
I'll take
unless you want me to do this again. I guess
I mean, we might have you back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah,
right. Thank you so much, Shawn. And everyone, if you have any questions if you want to take a look at what Become Offer Only is all about, head on over to becomeofferonly.com. Take a look, see if this sounds like what will open things up for you in a new way, and if you'll get to be the actor that you want to be by taking these steps. Thank you so much, Shawn.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.